When the Legends Died, Chapter 29. Red was up and dressed. "Where you been?" he demanded truculently. "Out at the arena," Tom said, "looking at the broncs." "They've all got 4 legs, haven't they?" Red was bleary-eyed with a hangover and in an ugly mood. Tom didn't answer him. "Get over it, get being tired? You damn well better. I paid your entry fee, and we're going for broke. I'm setting up the deadfall, so start figuring how to lose the first go-round and make it look good." Tom shook his head. "No, Red." "What did you say?" "No, bet it straight." Red gasped. "Who the hell's giving the orders round here? I said I'm setting up the deadfall." "No, I'm going to." "Don't you say no to me. I'm going to ride this one clean and for keeps." "Why, you dirty, lousy, double-crossing little Indian bastard!" Red made a lunge at him. Tom sidestepped the blow and knocked Red down. He scrambled to his feet, and Tom knocked him down again. Red was slower getting up that time, and Tom turned and left the room. Red didn't follow. Tom went downstairs, through the lobby, and out onto the street, where he walked for half an hour, letting his anger cool. Then it was almost noon, so he went into a cafe and had a bowl of chili. When he had eaten, he went back to the hotel room. Red wasn't there. Tom waited 10 minutes, then went out to the rodeo grounds, got his gear, checked the saddle, and took it out to the chutes. Red was nowhere in sight. He had drawn the number 4 ride, so he sat down in the shade of the chutes and waited. Then his horse was in the chute, a short coupled black with rolling eyes and quick movements. There still was no sign of Red, and when an old man with a gimpy leg asked if he wanted help saddling up, Tom said, "Yes, I could use some help." The old man held the horse's head down while Tom set the saddle in place. He tightened the cinches, shook the saddle, let off a notch on the back cinch, took up a notch on the front one. "He's a fast bucker," the old man said. "Don't give him too much rein." Tom nodded, hitched up his chaps. He let himself down into the saddle, and the old man handed him the rein. The first 2 rides were over, and the third rider got the signal and went out on a hard bucking bay. Tom glanced up, then looked for Red once more. Still no sign of him. He laced the reins through his fingers. The third rider was over. Tom saw the rider limping back to the chutes, slapping at the dust on his shirt, and knew he'd been thrown. Then the announcer bellowed, "Coming out of chute number 3 on Black Star, Tom Black." The bucking strap was jerked tight. Tom set his spurs and braced himself. The gate swung open, and the bronc lunged into the arena. For the first few jumps, Tom didn't know whether he could make it or not. Then something happened inside. He wasn't riding a bronc. He was riding a hurt, a hate. He had walked away from Red Dillon this morning because, though he hated him, he didn't want to kill him. Now he wanted to hurt and maim. All his tiredness was gone. His timing came back, all his skill. He raked and gouged with his spurs. He fought every pitch and lunge, punished the horse every way he could, and the horse fought back. The stands roared, but Tom didn't hear them. He didn't even hear the 10-second horn. His spurs kept gouging, and the horse kept fighting. Then the pickup man was yelling, "Time, time, you damn fool!" He grabbed the rein, and Tom automatically reached for his shoulder, swung out of the saddle, and pivoted off the pickup man's horse onto the ground. He unbuckled and stepped out of his chaps and went back to the chutes. A waiting rider asked, "What are you trying to do, kill off the livestock?" Then he saw the look in Tom's eyes and turned away silent. They brought his saddle, and Tom left the arena, not waiting to hear the score for the round. He had made his ride. The score didn't matter. He went back to the hotel. Red was there on the bed, deep in a drunken sleep. Tom started to leave the room, then turned back and went through Red's pockets. He found more than $700. He took all but $10 and went back downstairs. He walked along the street and came to a candy store. On impulse, he went in, bought a bag of gumdrops, and went up the street, his mouth full of candy. He came to a clothing store, its windows full of bright shirts, neckerchiefs, Levi jackets, boots. He stared at this display. He started to walk on. Then he saw himself in a corner mirror in the window. He stopped and stared, unbelieving, as though seeing himself for the first time. With his beat-up old hat, his long, ragged hair down on his shirt collar, his faded work shirt, and his worn Levi's, he looked like an overgrown reservation kid. He stared for several minutes, then looked at the clothes in the window again. He went inside, and he bought a whole new outfit: cream-colored hat, pink-striped silk shirt, purple neckerchief, copper-riveted Levi's, fancy stitched boots. He put everything on, left his old clothes in the fitting room, and paid the clerk. As he started to leave, the clerk said, "If those boots pinch, come back and—" Tom dashed back into the fitting room and salvaged his old boots. The one thing a bronc rider never throws away. You feel the horse, sense every move he makes through your feet in the stirrups, through your old, soft, worn boots. New boots are stiff, hard, slick in the stirrups. The clerk wrapped up the old boots for him. "Throw everything away?" he asked. Tom nodded. "Now," the clerk said with a smile, "all you need is a barber." Out on the street, Tom saw a barber's striped pole. He went in and sat in a barber chair for the first time in his life. When the man in the white coat had finished, Tom just sat there staring at himself in the mirror. The barber grinned at him in the mirror. "You sure needed a shearing," he said with a laugh. Tom looked at the man, then at himself in the mirror again. He was no longer a boy. He was a man. He looked like a ranch hand, fresh in town, shorn, slicked, and with 2 months' wages on his back. He looked to be 18 or 19 years old. Still marveling, he went out on the street again. But he had to get used to this new self. He found a pool hall, went in and chose a stool opposite a big wall mirror. He sat there an hour, vaguely watching the players, but mostly looking at himself in the mirror. Then it was supper time. He went to a restaurant. The waitress smiled at him. He couldn't understand why. Waitresses usually gave him one look and turned away, sniffing. The girls back of the counter watched him, talked among themselves, laughed, tried to catch his eye. When he had eaten, the girl at the cash register asked if he had enjoyed his meal, trying to get him to talk, to keep him there at the desk a little longer. But he paid his check and went out. It was late dusk, and as he walked along the street toward the hotel, he saw 2 girls watching him. Wondering what was wrong with him, he paused at a store window looking for a mirror. One of the girls came and stood beside him, making a show of looking in the window. He glanced at her, and she smiled and asked, "Don't I know you? Isn't your name—" She paused, her eyes inviting. He didn't know what to say. He wanted to run, and yet he wanted to stay. "What is your name?" she asked. "Tom," he said, but his tongue was slow and thick. "Tom Black." "Tom, of course, don't you remember? I'm Kitty." He didn't know anybody named Kitty. She put a hand on his arm. "My," she said softly, "you sure are good looking. I'll bet you're here with the rodeo." He nodded. "Yes." "I just love rodeo men." She smiled. "And I'm not busy tonight." He looked at her again, and his sensitive nose caught the scent of strong perfume, a musky smell, his pulse throbbing in his temples. Then he saw the crow feet around her eyes, the slight pouchiness under her chin, the little blotches beneath the makeup on her face. He saw the hard, calculating look in her eyes, the provocative smile on her lips, and he knew what she was. He turned away. She caught his arm again, pressed her body against him. "Tom, honey, don't go away. I've got a room." He pushed her from him and hurried up the street to the hotel. He got the key at the desk and went up to the room, hoping Red would be there. The room was empty. He went to the window, looked out, then turned off the light, and stood at the window a long time, letting his pulse throb and slowly ebb. There was only one thing that mattered to him, the arena, the battle with the Bronx. Deliberately, he went back over his ride again today. It was a good ride, clean, skillful, with perfect timing. He was tired now, very tired, but tomorrow he would ride again. His draw was a leggy bay called Sleepwalker, a big horse, probably as mean as they come, which suited him right down to the ground. Mean horse, spectacular ride. Then he heard her voice again, remembered the smell of her, the feel of her as she pressed against him. "To hell with them," he said out loud. "All of them, Red and the women, and all of them." And after a little while, dog-tired, he went to bed.